We are live on YouTube, and I think that we have a quorum at this point. Charlie?
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is an official GPAC meeting, so we will start the way we start all GPAC meetings with certain agenda items, and we welcome our guests. So I now call the August 31st special meeting of the Lafayette General Plan Advisory Committee to order. This meeting is streaming live on the city's YouTube and is also accessible by Zoom webinar. The link to the login is on the city's calendar. We will do a roll call for those committee members in attendance. Staff will read the names aloud. Committee members, when you hear your name, please affirm your presence.
Carol Singer. Amrita Castellanti.
Here.
Thank you. Don Jenkins.
Present.
Stella Wotherspoon. Matt Pease.
Present.
Beth Needle. Absent. Jim Cervantes.
Present.
Mike Kim. Absent. Susie Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. Christine Rasmussen.
Present.
And Chris Lee.
Here.
Thank you. And I see Stella just joined us. All right.
Thank you, Renata. Would a committee member like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, the agenda is adopted. Moving on to public comment. We will now take public comment on any item that is not on the agenda. If your comment pertains, well, we have registered guests, so we'll be receiving comments from our registered guests tonight. So the time limit for public comment not related to tonight's agenda is 3 minutes. Staff, do we have any public comment at this time?
If you would like to make a public comment, use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or *9 if you're calling in. David Clark would like to make a public comment. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Sarah. Chair Lee, this is more of a point of information, but I'm a member of the Creeks Committee, as you know, and we obviously have an interest in this topic. And in fact, the committee has submitted a written document for consideration either tonight or at your next meeting, as you see, or both, as you determine best fits the situation. But I just wanted to make clear that any Creek Committee members that are attending tonight are here in their individual capacity. And to the extent that we may, I don't know, I haven't looked, but that we may have what would otherwise be a quorum for Creeks Committee purposes. This is not a duly called meeting of the Creeks Committee, and that quorum, I don't want it to, it's not intended to be, nor should I don't want the perception to be that this is a Creeks Committee meeting. So any Creeks Committee members who happen to be attending are attending in their individual capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any more public comment?
Lynn McMichael would like to make a public comment.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Lynn.
Thank you so much for doing all the work you're doing, all of you. I'm just trying to connect to find out if our DEIB committee members are on the agenda for tonight. I'm sorry, I just got in and I don't know that. Can you tell me that?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I think the people that are registered for tonight have registered as individuals, so they're representing themselves. And I don't have a full list of who has registered.
I think that Allison Hill is representing our task for our committee, but I'm not sure, and I didn't know where that was coming up on the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
I don't see any other hands raised at this time.
Okay. So we'll move to our mission statement workshop. And Jim Cervantes, who heads up the subcommittee, is going to give us a welcome message and talk about the agenda for tonight. Jim?
Thank you very much, Chair Lee, and welcome. And I'm going to lead us off here with sort of an overview, some background on what the GPAC has done with respect to the mission statement. The mission statement subcommittee that's been doing the work and drafting the mission statement we'll talk about later, kind of what we'll do with tonight's session and sort of next steps afterwards. So, but I thought just to make sure that we've got everyone on the same playing field, just to go back to the beginning, which is almost a year ago now, the General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC, was formed by the City Council about a year ago to address the need to update the city's general plan. That's a state law requirement. It happens about every 20 years. And so the GPAC was engaged. We're a group of volunteers. We were chosen by lottery last fall in October. And the way it was set up, there are 4 districts in the city, each kind of with a representative, an at-large representative. We have 4 city commission representatives and representatives from the nonprofit sector, a representative from the nonprofit sector, and 1 from the Chamber of Commerce. And in addition, we have 2 non-voting liaison, 1 from the Planning Commission and 1 from the City Council. So that comprises the GPAC, a mix of voting and non-voting members. So early in our meetings back in the fall, in some of the more conceptual discussions we had about the general plan, one of the issues or topics came up about whether the current mission statement, which was drafted in 1968 when the city incorporated, whether that really sort of resonated with where the city was at now, as we're talking about an iteration of the general plan that will go out another 20 years. We raised the topic with the City Council to see if what they might choose to do with that, and we were charged, the GPAC was charged, to take a look at the mission statement and to make any revision or submit a new or rework it and submit it back to the City Council. So that was early in this year, and to sort of make that happen, because it's frankly kind of hard to do something like that with a group of 15 odd people, the GPAC formed a mission statement subcommittee, which is comprised of 3 volunteers, myself, Namratha Castellanti, and Matt Peace, and you'll hear from the 3 of us as we start off today. In addition, the city engaged Jamie Harris as a consultant to help us, and he helped sort of design the work we're doing, and Jamie's waving at us here. I can see him in the corner of my eye. But he's been invaluable helping us to work through this process, to facilitate sessions, and we'll be involved in facilitating tonight's session as well. He'll do one of the breakouts and will help kind of keep this train moving. In addition to Jamie, we've had 2 key city staff helping us, both from the planning department, Sarah Allen and Renata Robles. And so that comprises the mission statement subcommittee, 3 members of the GPAC, Jamie Harris, and 2 folks from city staff. So our key priority when we ventured out about February of this year was to try to figure out ways to best get public information to inform our work. We spent 2 months working on a public survey, which we vetted with the GPAC and vetted with the City Council, with the idea of seeking input on several things, and one of which was the public's view of top attributes that should be incorporated into a future vision. Another was a set of the community priorities, and then funding priorities of those responding. And we also asked some general questions on core values and concepts that represent the ideal Lafayette of the future. And so that was a survey. It launched beginning of May. It was open through July 15th, so about 2.5 months. The GPAC and the city heavily publicized it. We had pieces in the Roundup, next door, a variety of mailed pieces trying to get people to focus on this. In the end, we received just under 700 responses. And I kind of want to caveat this, and this goes back to my days designing surveys when I was an undergrad in sociology, but it is not a scientific survey. It's not randomized. It skews to an older homeowner population relative to the city as a whole. But acknowledging that, the survey was very helpful in providing us with direction. It gave us a view on what folks were thinking and really helped us move into drafting draft statement of values, vision, and helped us move us along. So so we're going to be talking about the sort of three-part statement, and Matt Pease will sort of get into that after me. We presented the draft of that to the GPAC at its last meeting, and the GPAC decided it would be helpful to get further community input, which is why we're having tonight's session, inviting the public in. And in addition, the draft statements are up on the website. This is on the engagement platform that we set up for the general plan. And we're inviting folks to comment on it. We've gotten some comments so far. That survey remains open until September 10th, which is a Friday. We certainly welcome all those on this program to dial into that and to share their thoughts, because in the end, we're trying to get as much public input as we can. The thought being that the more we get, the more robust the discussion is, and the more meaningful the whole exercise will be. So in tonight's session, we're going to do breakout groups, because it's rather hard to have a meaningful conversation with a group this large. And then Maratha Castellanti will talk about that a little bit later on. And so each breakout group will focus on a couple of questions of the same question, and we'll have facilitators involved whose job is to basically take notes. We have members of the GPAC here, and we're also honored to have some city council members as well. Both the GPAC and the council members will be listeners, because we really want to hear what the public has to say. So when we can wrap up the sessions with these discussion groups, which will be about a half hour in total, we'll come back together, maybe give the facilitators a chance to work on their notes. The facilitators will sort of present a high-level review of what their groups talked about, and then we'll wrap up at the end with a poll just to get a read on where people in this audience are with respect to what's been in front of them. So that's tonight. After that, the survey is still open, as I mentioned. That goes to September 10th. The subcommittee is going to get together after that, and in the mixer, take a look at the comments we received tonight, the comments we received from the GPAC, the comments we've received from responses to the survey the survey that's on the website right now, and take a look at what we have, rework it quite likely. The idea being that we come back to the GPAC again for further discussion, and at some point get approval from the GPAC to submit something to the City Council, and they will then take it into their consideration to do what they will with what we present to them. So there's a lot of process here, but that's a good thing, because we want to make sure that we get as much public input as possible. And so we're excited to have the session tonight. We really look forward to hearing from you all. And then maybe what I'll do now is to get us to the main entree, in which case I'd like to pass this microphone to Matt Pease to talk through the draft vision, mission, and value statements that we'll be looking at just in a little bit here. So Matt, take it away.
Okay, Jim, thanks very much. As the survey data came in and we got feedback from the public and the public meetings we had and the written correspondence we got, we also wanted to look at how has this been done in other cities of similar size to Lafayette. So we went on the web and we looked at lots of different mission and vision statements and business plans for other cities in other parts of the United States. Candidly, they're all different. There is no set format of how to do a vision, mission plan in cities. They range from very, very concise, short statements to documents that frankly are quite lengthy in nature. So there was really no template to follow, but we did find some really good examples. In fact, surprisingly, one of the good examples we found was over in some work that Moraga has been doing. I don't know whether they've adopted it yet, but a gentleman by the name of Gary Hill had been doing some work with the city. And there were some aspects of the format he used and some of the definitions he used that we found really useful. And we thought was great in terms of clarifying how to lay this out. But as I've mentioned, there are a lot of differences. And so the first thing that the committee did was to set up some definitions of the different phrases that we use in this document. And Sarah, can I ask you to put up the first slide, please? As Sarah's doing that, the first thing we wanted to define is what is a vision? And you can read it here on the screen, but really you can think about the vision as the end state, the goal that we want to get to as a city eventually. Doesn't mean that we're there today, and it doesn't mean it'll happen tomorrow, but it's a long-term goal that is aspirational in nature. And it needs to be both aspirational and achievable, although it takes hard work by a lot of people to get there. Hopefully, it'll also be inspirational, that it inspires people to do great things in this city. But it's looking forward in general, and it is a long-term goal. We're thinking in 20-year increments at this point. So that's the idea of a vision, this long-term end state we want to get to. The mission statement, on the other hand, is much more near-term. That is how the group operates today on a day-to-day basis. How does the city kind of operate? Not just the government. In fact, we talk very little about that in the document. It's how as a community do we operate? Who do we include? How do we think about making decisions? And how does this happen on a day-to-day basis that'll ultimately get us to this vision we hope to see? And the other definition is characteristics. They're also sometimes called values. And those are the kind of identifying traits of the city that many of us are familiar with. They could be physical in nature. They could be long-standing protocol or history of how we've done things in the city that we have found to be very beneficial. But they are the aspects of the city that kind of help us decide how to operate in this mission to get to this ultimate vision that we're looking at. So with those three definitions in mind, we also thought about what are the principles that we wanted to put into this document. You can see it here on the screen. The idea was to keep this very short, very simple, aspirational, and we wanted to guide the city, not to dictate policy. As I mentioned earlier, this is a 20-year document, we hope. And so we want to give the community, the leaders in the community, our city leaders, the ability to make policy as technology changes, as the needs of our community changes, because a lot can happen in the next 20 years. So we're keeping it at a very high level and using very broad terms and allowing the community and our city government to actually fit the policy to help us achieve that vision. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Sarah. So based on the survey data that we received, as Jim mentioned, it wasn't scientific, but it was really, really helpful. And also the input that we've gotten with all the meetings we've had over the last 10 months or so. This is the draft that exists today that we wanted to get feedback on. And so I have you look at the vision piece. We talk about this idea of a safe, welcoming, family-friendly town. Those words were picked because they not only did they come up very high on the survey, but also we felt they were very fundamental to how the city should see itself. And this idea of safe, we're using that in the broadest term possible. We don't mean just police and fire and medical, physical safety, but we're talking about feeling safe when you're going to the store, that you're not judged, that you're not treated differently because you're a visitor versus a resident, or you're treated differently for any other reason, or bullied or discriminated against. So we wanted people to feel safe, and we really called out, this is both for residents and visitors. Visitors are an important aspect of Lafayette. Many of our businesses depend on visitors. We are not isolated, in this community. We have towns nearby. People come through our town all the time. So we wanted to apply this to both residents and visitors. And then we talk about this concept of the city being, and we use the word nestled, in open spaces with hills and parks throughout the city. The idea being that this is not an urban environment. This is an area that has this beautiful setting that we want to take advantage of and preserve and make it part of the city where people can congregate in open spaces freely, whether they're visitors or residents. So this is the long-term vision of where we would like to see the city go. Once again, we may not be there today, but it's someplace where we want to get to.
We're not there today.
From of how we get there, we talk about the idea in this mission statement is this community of both residents and businesses. Many of our business owners live here in the city, but not all of them do. But they all have a vested interest, just like all the residents who want this city to be successful. And so we have this idea of working together with residents and business owners in a more of a volunteer sense, which is really a history of this city. It's a strong part of our city, working together to make Lafayette just this great place to live, to visit, and to grow up in. The idea of people can be here for a long period of time. This is an area that you could be here all your life. So that is how we're going to operate in this draft to get to this vision. These are kind of our thoughts based on the survey and the input we've seen from people. And then on the right-hand side, you see the characteristics. And I don't need to clear every one of these, but the idea is that everyone in town has value in terms of what they can contribute from volunteering, working here. Their voice should be heard. And it doesn't mean everybody gets their way. And there may have to be some tough decisions, but we value people here. We include people. There's a level of inclusion here that's very important. We talk about education, and those of us who live here for a very short period of time realize schools are a big deal here. Whether you are going to the school, whether you are a parent of a child going here, or you're an adult that continues to learn, education is very important to people here. They volunteer for this. They write checks for it. They tax themselves for it. It clearly is a very big priority for this city. We also talk about this idea of, and there's a bit of a tension in this third bullet point of both a sustainable environment and sufficient infrastructure. And these are trade-offs that we're going to have to make as a community for years and years. Now, as technology changes, how we do those trade-offs may change. And we want to maintain some flexibility there, but we still need roads. We still need to light our houses, heat our houses, or use air conditioning these days. And we have to think about, fire dangers and things such as that. So this is going to be a balance or a bit of a tension there and decisions that we'll have to continue to make. The mission statement talks about the characteristics of a vibrant downtown core, keeping that centralized, keeping that in an area where people feel free to visit down there, walk around, enjoy the restaurants, the shops. Once again, whether you live here, whether you're a visitor, that it attracts people there. And keeping it in that core downtown area as opposed to spreading it out in other parts of the city. And then finally, the one thing we do mention about our city government is this concept of this fiscally responsible and transparent city government, that decisions are made in the open. They may not be ones we all agree with, but we're able to participate in this just like we are today. And much of what is done in the city is done on a volunteer basis, which allows us to do a lot as a city without necessarily having the fiscal means to do that. So based on the survey and based on the input that we've had over the last few months, this is the draft that the subcommittee came up with and is looking for your input. And I'm now going to turn it over to Namratha, who's going to talk a little bit about the next steps of how this process is going to work.
Okay, hi, can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great.
So I'm just going to talk a bit about what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be breaking into breakout rooms, and each breakout room will be asked the same two questions, which are question one, with the understanding that a mission and vision statement is intended to describe a long-term aspiration and give general guidance for the community. What is your reaction to this draft? That's question one. And question two is, what, if anything, would you suggest to add, delete, or change to make it better? So each breakout room will be asked those same two questions, and there will be GPAC members in the groups. There might be city council members, but they are just going to listen, and yeah, everybody else can talk, and we want to hear from everyone. We really want to hear more about the concepts and the ideas, not particularly like the intricacies of wording. So is there something big we're missing? Is there like an idea we're missing? Is there something you want to see, something you don't want to see? Those are things to put in, not like whether we should have and or but, that type of thing. And there's just a couple of kind of ground rules that we're going to try to hold ourselves to today. Oops, sorry, give me 1 second. It's generally kind of share the air, okay. Yeah, basically share the air. So listen to others as much or like more than you speak, so everyone can have a chance to contribute. And also remember, we are a community and we're a lot of different people, a lot of different points of view. So let's be respectful to each other and give the respect that we'd expect to receive for ourselves. Let's approach all the new ideas with curiosity and interest. Let's not try to attack each other. And we need to all participate in allowing everyone to speak their piece. We want to hear from everyone, kind of maintain this inclusive and welcoming community that we're trying to create. And so let me just turn it over to Jamie for some last minute logistical details and stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Namratha. Sarah and Renata are dividing us, and this will be done randomly into groups. I think we're going to be in 4 different groups. Matt and Jim and Namratha and I will each take one. And our role is simply going to be to kind of help guide the conversation, be sure everybody has a chance to speak in response to these 2 questions, and take as detailed and accurate a notes as we can. When we come back after this 30 minutes time of conversation, we'll take about a 5-minute break, and each of us will sort of summarize our notes as best we can and report back to you at least some of the common themes, the high level points that we heard. Obviously, we won't have time to report out everything, but we will also be writing up the detail of the notes and providing that back to the GPAC as part of the record for this process. So I would just emphasize a couple of things that you heard from Jim and Matt. This is a first draft. It's very much a working draft. It's based on a lot of input that's already come in, but the really valuable thing that I think community members here tonight can contribute is how do you react to it? And as Namratha said, is there any big idea missing? Is there something that just doesn't seem right at a high level? Is it kind of on the right track, or is it kind of on the wrong track, or some of it's right track, some of it's wrong track? That level, as opposed to digging in and trying to wordsmith, well, I don't like this word, it could be substitute something else. I think that'll drive everybody crazy. We're not also in these breakout groups or this workshop looking for agreement or decision or anything. We're looking for people's thinking and honest reaction, and the advice that you can give from your perspective to the subcommittee and through them to the GPAC. Ultimately, the decision maker here is the City Council, and I think we can all be quite sure that if and when all this gets to the City Council, there will be more public hearings and plenty of opportunity for yourselves and your friends and neighbors to have additional input. I also want to emphasize the survey on this draft, which has been mentioned will be open till the 10th. You're welcome to please go there and fill that out yourself. And please let other people in your circles of acquaintance know about it. Let's try to get as robust a number of people looking at and giving feedback on this draft through that survey as we possibly can. It's been promoted too, but we all know that sometimes those things telling about a survey kind of escape people's notice. So hearing a word from a neighbor saying, hey, there's this survey, it'd be really good if you go online and fill it out. That would be really great if everybody would do that after this meeting. So our discussion sections will be 30 minutes. And Renata, Sarah, do you have us already assigned into breakout groups, and can we get started?
Yes, so we do have everyone in breakout rooms. There may be a few technical difficulties, but stand by. We'll get you all in there. So
okay, and we'll ask you to keep track of 30 minutes for us, and give each of the breakout groups a couple of minutes warning when the 30 minutes is about up. As facilitators, we'll also try to keep track of the time so that we have adequate time for each question in the conversation.
All right, here we go. Let's see.
Join breakout room. Everybody hit the little blue button.
Oops, did I change mine? There's a couple of people that I think signed up at the very end, so they weren't pre-assigned. So we'll get you in. And if you are still in this main room, you'll need to accept the invitation to join a room. It should be a pop-up on your screen.
I'm not seeing it.
Let me see, Ruth, where, let's see. This is breakout room 2. Why is that? Do you have all of your windows closed? Is it maybe, did it pop up and then it's behind?
I don't see it. What group am I supposed to be with?
It looks like you are on
Room 2.
room 2.
Well, that's the one that I joined, and I was not included.
Let me see if I can assign you a different one here. Did you get a pop-up? There she goes. Okay, Michael. Hi, Karen. We just jumped into breakout rooms, so I'll go ahead and assign you to one now. So Karen, Michael, and James, there should be a pop-up on your window that asks you to go to a specific breakout room. And if you want to just accept that, join the room, then you can join the conversation. And if you are having technical difficulties, just go ahead and unmute and I can try and help you out. Hi, Janet. Looks like you just joined and we are in our breakout room. So I'll go ahead and assign you to a room now. So you'll just want to accept that pop-up that says it's an invitation to join the room. Jamie, are you? There we go. I can't hear you.
So good. Everybody's starting to come back. Great. Sarah, for those remaining in group, can you give them a signal that it's time to return? All it looks like everybody's coming back.
Yes, I did close the breakout rooms and they
Okay.
have the option of rejoining now or waiting till it just times out and I'll come back in.
Okay, great.
My group is just told they had a 2-minute break.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a 5-minute break right now anyway. So let's, Sarah, can you put up a 5-minute timer here? And during those 5 minutes, I and the other facilitators will try to summarize our notes and be able to relay back in short order a summary of the things that we heard so that everybody can kind of hear what happened in the other groups. And then after that, we'll go to the online live poll, which we will ask you to respond to your level of agreement or disagreement with one specific question that we'd like to wrap up the evening with. So let's take a 5-minute break and see you in on the other side of that break, as they say on the television news commentators.
Well,
Okay, Jamie, that is 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome back, everybody. Well, I noticed that my breakout group had a #1 number on it. So why don't I just go first with the summary of that. We had a small group. We had 4 members who were not members of either the council or the GPAC. A few things rose to the surface, I think, in the discussion. One interesting point, and I think is good for us to be aware of, the concern that property owners who may not actually live here, but have investment in the community as a property owner, perhaps we have not, the draft doesn't address that group of stakeholders, and a question was raised, has the input process so far adequately reached out to people in that category. Another section of the conversation dealt with the concept of livability, and really wanting to be sure that the direction of this draft or final product really is focused on livability for all, young, old, people who grew up here, people who move here. And a related concern was that what has potentially been the real strength and power of the community in the past might not be in the future. The future is going to be different. And so, we need to think about what livability means for everybody, all ages, in the future, in terms of services, in terms of economic development, in terms of priorities. And so, for example, the question was raised, well, focus priority on education. That's certainly served the community in the past. It's important now. Will that be that important in the future was a question that was posed. So I think it's about balancing focus on multiple priorities that will make a livable community for everybody, was what I understood the comments to be saying. There was a very strong advocacy by 2 members to be sure that the word creeks is in there. It references open space, trails, parks, and creeks. There are plenty of creeks in town. There's already been a lot of feedback and input on that, work on creeks, plans for creek development, for example, in the downtown plan. And so that was one specific ad that kind of stood out in our group. The last comment that I think I could mention in the summary is, between the vision and the mission statement, a little sense that maybe the mission statement in terms of the how portion could use some upgrade. Is there a little bit more congruence between what the vision has to say and what the how element of the mission has to say? There weren't specific words proposed, but that was the question that was raised. So that's it from group 1.
Okay, Jamie, I'll go next if that's okay.
Sure.
I had a slightly smaller group of 3 people that were participating. They were respectful, good listening, and some really good suggestions. So it was a great discussion, but we had a fairly high level of diversity of thoughts about what should go into and the reaction to the document. Everyone seemed to like at least some of the words that were in the document, but others wanted some expansion in certain areas and maybe some consideration of using phrases that we used in the previous vision and mission statement. So one person suggested that we need to think a little bit about expanding the words of what safe really means. They heard my definition when I presented it, but the document itself doesn't say that. And some people may not think about that broad term the way I talked about it. One person suggested, is there a way we can use this to help limit growth and maintain local control? Not necessarily a suggested phrase, but putting wording in there that would make that stronger. Another individual wanted to expand the concepts more about diversity, inclusion, and include those in broader educational themes, and overall to really help remove barriers to diversity in our city, including areas around housing, racial issues, and disabilities. One person really wanted the semi-rural or slash small town to be put in there. Another person didn't feel like that's a phrase that really applies to us anymore. So they presented us a wonderful opportunity to take a lot of diverse thoughts and try to come up with something. So it was helpful to get all these different perspectives. So that's what we heard.
Hey, do you want to go next?
Oh.
Amrita?
Yeah, I think we were group 3. And so I'll just keep the comments pretty short. We had a great discussion. I had 6 non-GPAC members, which was pretty cool. So I think the first thing a lot of people said is we're almost there. So that's great. Some want the semi-rural and like autonomy and land use components in there. We would like more about infrastructure and access routes in and out of the city. A lot about fire safety, which is kind of a big issue right now. We like the government transparency bit, and would like more about governing with community feedback and community input. And some members feel like we might want a more business-like tone in the mission. We don't really love the word nestled, and we're thinking it's a little too general with the education component in the values. And we'd like to add more into that part with like a great place to a great place to grow old in, and a great place to work also. And we'd like to look into the DEI and the Creeks proposals that were submitted in public comment.
Thanks, Amrita. That leaves Jim.
Thank you. And so I think I lucked out because we had like about 6 people in my group. And it was an interesting discussion. I think the broad thrust was that individuals really kind of liked the thrust of the existing mission statement. One individual said it worked for us. And a number of folks expressed concerns about potential loss of local control, which I gather is given that SB 9 and 10 have passed the legislature. And so that was sort of a theme among many folks. And some individuals noted that they liked the sense of volunteerism here, kind of the way the city's run. People feeling that the existing statement's good. A couple of folks noted that they like the idea of adding concept of welcoming, which is sort of a word from the or phrasing from in the proposed mission statement, and the framing of hills and valleys and schools. So I think a lot of folks felt that the idea of preservation enhancement of this community was a really key concept. Again, I think a lot of it circled around the notion of trying to keep some amount of local control in the going forward. I think one thing, and this may be something for us to just think through here, is that one individual mentioned that some of the ideas and the vision and guiding characteristics could be helpful, but more in the context of keeping pretty much the existing mission statement and maybe having that sort of like either folded in or sort of kind of as an adjunct to it. And then some folks raised some of the concepts that are in the draft document, I think struck where some folks raised concern about infrastructure, because that's something that's in the characteristics, I think, especially if growth increases instead of managing that. So that was kind of the thrust of it, I'd say, and I will work to transcribe these notes to get it up to Sarah here so we can memorialize it.
Yeah, great. Okay. We do have a couple of minutes if there's a quick response. I see Lynn's got her hand up here.
Oh.
Take a couple of general comments, and then I'd like to move on, if we can, to the quick poll that we'd like to do before we.
Jamie?
Jamie, yeah,
Jamie?
okay. There's another
Yes.
people. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, there was a group 5 and we
That
did
was a
not
group
have a
5. Oh,
facilitator.
okay. Oh, my gosh.
So I was the facilitator.
Oh, Chris, I was unaware that there was a 5th group. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Please, go ahead. Give
we
us your
couldn't
summary.
figure out why we didn't have a facilitator. So we actually unfortunately lost some time, but I had a really good group, really responsive, coming from different points of view, and it was really a pleasure for me to listen to their comments. We had 2 people in our group talk about the semi-rural and small town words that are missing
Three
from the
people. We had
draft.
3 people, Chris. 3.
Okay.
I
Okay.
took the notes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
You wanted
All
me
right.
to take the notes, so I did. But there were
Okay.
3.
So there were 5 people other than GPAC members.
6.
And
There were
apparently
6. 6 people. Go ahead.
Okay. Apparently in the downtown specific plan of 2012, a survey was taken of the citizens of Lafayette, and the 2 of the highest rated values in the survey were semi-rural and small town. So that was mentioned to point out the fact that this has been a sort of a continuing set of values for the city. And so we want to bring that up. And it's why people have chosen to live here. We had another comment about building a vibrant downtown core, concerned about infrastructure problems now and in the future. And that's also mentioned as these 2 items are mentioned in the characteristics sections of the mission statement draft, but they did come up in our conversation. One person mentioned that there's not enough emphasis on parks and trails and creeks, and that it would be wonderful to have a walkable network of creeks in the downtown that would attract walkers and bikers. And this person also mentioned that we might want to be more explicit about DEI than just using the word welcoming. And I heard that in a previous report out. So we heard that too. We had a comment about preserving hills and green spaces. And we had a comment about prioritizing sustainability in the form of affordable housing and building climate smart buildings. And also a comment on prioritizing environmental justice. And Carol, if there's anything else that you have in your notes?
No, that's fine.
Okay, great. So thank you to my group. We got off to a rough start, but.
Well, then thank you, Christine, for jumping in the breach there.
Oh, no problem.
Little glitch in our organization.
No problem.
Lynn, I see a hand up from you. You're on mute. You're muted, Lynn.
Okay,
There.
I think I'm good now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Namratha was our wonderful group leader, but in her summary, I think I would like to reemphasize that the DEIB statement we wrote up did emphasize, for instance, in vision, and housing available to residents of diverse income levels and backgrounds. And then we picked that up in the mission statement to support local as well as regional needs, including housing needs. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that before we finish. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We have a few more minutes, and I would like to ask everyone to respond to one question in a survey. This is a poll that you can vote on your screen, and we'll get immediate response. again, I think for purposes of being sure that this is public input, I'm going to ask GPAC members and council members to not, at this point, respond to the question. You'll have further deliberations for sure, but just for the non-agents and non-body members of our meeting here. So Sarah could, or Renata, would you go ahead and put the poll up? And how do people respond to this? Sarah, please give some instructions.
So it should be a pop-up on your screen.
Yeah, does everybody see that, the pop-up
Yes.
poll? Okay, and then you just check the box, right?
Check
That
the box you like, and then it should be, say a submit.
This is obviously a very high-level, general, and directional question. It's not very specific. But
You're saying, do we agree with the draft of the city, which would be disregarding everyone's comment tonight?
just to the extent that you can focus on the draft as it is,
Okay, okay.
does it reflect a city you'd be proud to live in or not?
Okay. Thank you.
And Jamie, maybe while we're waiting for the poll results, I see Lynn has her hand up.
Yes. Yes, hi, Lynn. You're on mute, Lynn. You're on mute, Lynn. Can you unmute Lynn, Sarah?
Now, am I okay?
Yes, now we can hear you, Lynn. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to state that we need to be consistent with our topography and our geology. There's a spoiler in every group, and I think I'm probably it. But we have, we need to be sure of what we're dealing with when we're building things on top of the soil. And we have 4 to 5 fault lines that are expected to move when the Hayward Fault moves. They're not just static that happened a long time ago and are never going to move again. They're expected to. And we have geology problems other than that sort of thing. We've got landslides, which I brought up in our group, and we have not just a few landslides, we've got hundreds of landslides in Lafayette. That's
Okay.
a few is Orinda Moraga, hundreds are Lafayette. So we should take all of that into consideration. And what else did I want to point out? If possible, to point out that, well, maybe instead of pointing out something else, transparency is another thing that we ought to be always mindful of. I wanted to point out that I don't know how many of you heard the interviews with the city council, but Waitai brought up the fact that we want to be able to negotiate. And now that the legislature has voted the way it has, we might be able to negotiate with our legislators or the powers that be in Sacramento. This is our city. We see it this way. We have these problems. We are different, and to pursue those.
Okay.
So all of these things we can explore. And yeah,
I'll just ask whoever was the facilitator in the group you were in to be sure that those 2 points are in the notes.
one more point, if I may. Frank Lloyd Wright described Lafayette as attracting the numbers of people that it did even in its early years because of its majestic beauty of our views, our ridgelines, our hills, the surroundings. We need to be preserving those.
Okay.
For the future. This is a heritage of our future residents.
Thank you, Lynn.
Grandchildren.
Okay. So whoever was in the group that Lynn was in. Okay, Namratha, you've got those points. Great. Okay, so we have some results to share here, and then we're trying to be true to the time commitment that people have made tonight. We will wrap things up. So here's how people have responded to that question. Pretty broad distribution. Okay, that's useful directional information. As we can expect, a wide variety of beliefs and opinions in our town. That's one of the great things about it, right? Thank you all very much. At this point, I think I should turn it back to Christine as chairman of the GPAC to close this GPAC meeting. Christine, are you there?
I am.
Okay. I think the workshop is concluded and it's back to you as the GPAC chair to
Okay,
wrap up.
great. Thank you. So this is the end of the agenda for tonight's meeting. And I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And tell your friends and neighbors to go do the survey.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.